The first time I saw Mark, I thought he was a ghost. Not a scary one, but a beautiful, heartbreaking apparition from a past I thought I'd buried. It was in a dimly lit wine bar on a Tuesday, and he was sitting alone, a half-empty glass of bourbon turning in his long fingers. He looked exactly as he had 5 years ago, right down to the slight crinkle at the corner of his eyes when he smiled. The same smile that had shattered my world. My feet carried me to his table before my brain could scream run. Marky looked up and the shock on his face was genuine. Lena, my God, his eyes swept over me, and I was acutely aware of the woman I'd become, sharper, stronger, the soft edges sanded away by grief. The Lena he knew was gone. We talked, of course, we talked. He told me he'd heard about David, my husband, his old friend. He offered condolences that sounded like they were carved from his own guilt. He said he'd been traveling, finding himself that he was a different man now. The old Mark, the one who had been David's business partner and best friend, was a fool. He looked at me with those earnest blue eyes and I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so badly it was a physical ache, because the truth was, Mark hadn't just been David's friend. He was the reason David was dead. It wasn't a murder the police would recognize. There was no weapon, no forced entry, just a betrayal so profound it broke my husband's spirit. David had discovered it by accident, a hidden ledger, a second set of books. Mark had been embezzling from their startup for years, funneling hundreds of thousands into offshore accounts. The night David confronted him, Mark didn't deny it. He just coldly laid out the facts. If David went to the police, the company would collapse, taking dozens of employees and their life savings with it. He painted David into a corner of impossible choices. David chose his conscience. He was preparing the evidence for the authorities the next morning when he had a massive heart attack at his desk. The doctor called it stress-induced, a perfect, legal murder. Mark played the grieving partner perfectly at the funeral, his hand on my arm, a brand of hypocrisy. Then he sold the company's assets for pennies on the dollar, dissolved it, and vanished with what was left of the money. I was left with a mountain of debt and a hollowed-out heart. For 5 years I planned. I wasn't the vengeful widow type. I was a librarian, for God's sake. But grief is a fantastic teacher. It taught me patience. It taught me how to hide my true self behind a mask of quiet recovery. I used David's life insurance money not for a new start, but for a private investigator. I tracked every dollar Mark had stolen. I learned his new name, his habits, his favorite bourbon. I knew he had a weakness for vulnerable women and a pathological belief in his own charm. I became the perfect bait. So, our chance meeting wasn't chance at all. It was the first move in a game of chess I'd been studying for half a decade. He slipped back into my life with the ease of a snake into warm grass. There were dinners, whispered conversations, his hand finding the small of my back. He confessed his past sins in a carefully edited version, a youthful mistake, with the company funds that he deeply regretted, something that had driven a wedge between him and David. He cried when he told me, real tears. The performance was Oscar-worthy. I held his hand and told him everyone deserves a second chance. I was the understanding, lonely widow, and I played the part to perfection. The trust fund was my idea. We should honor David, I said one night, my head on his shoulder. Use that money you've been managing. Let's start a foundation for entrepreneurs in his name. It would cleanse it, Mark, for both of us. He loved the idea. His ego loved it even more, a public monument to his own magnanimity, funded by the money he'd stolen. He set up the accounts, transferred the funds, and gave me full access as the proposed director. I trust you, Lena, he said, kissing my forehead. The irony was so thick I could taste it, metallic and sweet, like blood. The night of the gala was the culmination of my plan. It was the foundation's launch, a black-tie event at the city's most prestigious hotel. Mark was resplendent in a tuxedo, basking in the glow of his own manufactured redemption. He gave a speech about David, about legacy, about learning from your mistakes. The crowd applauded. I smiled, my hand resting gently on his arm. Then it was my turn to take the podium. The lights were bright, hot on my face. I looked out at the sea of expectant, smiling faces, my gaze finally landing on Mark. He gave me an encouraging nod. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice clear and steady through the microphone. Mark has spoken so beautifully about David's legacy, and he's right. David was a man of immense integrity. He believed in truth. He believed in justice. I paused, letting the words hang in the air. He died because someone he trusted betrayed those very principles. A faint ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Mark's smile tightened. 5 years ago, I continued. My eyes locked on his. Mark Barlow embezzled over $2 million from the company he built with my husband. When David discovered the theft and was going to the police, the stress killed him. Mark didn't pull a trigger, but he murdered my husband just the same. The room was utterly silent. You could hear the ice melting in the glasses. Mark was on his feet, his face a mask of panic. Lena, darling, this is the grief. It's too much for you. I clicked the small remote in my hand. The giant screen behind me, which had been displaying the foundation's logo, lit up with scanned images of the hidden ledger, bank transfer records, the private investigator's report. I had sent digital copies to every major news outlet and the district attorney's office an hour earlier. The money in this so-called foundation, I said, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper of the microphone picked up perfectly, is the stolen money. Every last cent. The accounts are frozen. The evidence is public. Chaos erupted. Camera phones flashed. Mark stood frozen, a statue of shame in a tuxedo, as reporters rushed the stage. The look on his face wasn't just one of anger or defeat. It was the look of a man watching his entire fabricated world dissolve into dust. He wasn't just being caught. He was being unmasked. His redemption narrative twisted into a noose. I walked away from the podium, through the parting crowd. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The sound of his reputation shattering was music I had waited 5 years to hear. The police took him away an hour later. I heard he pleaded guilty, avoiding a drawn-out trial. Some say it was remorse. I know it was because the evidence was irrefutable. They say living well is the best revenge. They're wrong. The best revenge is a perfectly laid trap, baited with the one thing your enemy can't resist, his own ego. He thought he had gotten away with the perfect crime, but he forgot one thing. A broken heart never forgets how to beat.